Welcome to The Bald and the Beard, our first episode of 2026. I'm Andrew, and for those of you that don't have visuals, I'm the Beard, and this is...
And I'm Tom Luther, the Bald. As hard as I tried over the holidays, I just couldn't get any hair to grow.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. So I think we owe our audience an explanation of our absence, Tom. It's been longer than we wanted it to be. All good reasons why that was the case, but do you want to share what we've been up to since last time we recorded one of these?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, all good news. I think it's been a time of real acceleration for both technology and labor, as I think most of the industry is aware. And, I think we've been up to our eyeballs in great work with a lot of world-class brands and BPOs. So I appreciate everybody's patience. I know we love doing these, and look forward to getting back on a more consistent framework with everybody now that things have started to level out.
Yeah, and I feel a sense of it's really easy to be distracted in that day-to-day and the great work that we're doing, but part of why we do this is to take those learnings and bring them to the market and say, this is where things are at, this is what we're seeing, these are the trends. So I think, yes, we need to do a better job of being more consistent despite all of the other stuff going on. Those of you that are familiar with our videos, the background's a little different because in the midst of all of that, there was also a relocation for me to the Twin Cities. So I'm close to the office now. So another reality of life that got in the way of a few things. But yeah, so here we are. So we wanted to kick off this year with addressing the many 2026 predictions in the CX space that are virtually every outlet of CX media has some sort of prediction. We wanted to do our myth or reality take, the blunt situation of is this real or not? And there's some interesting ones in there. I think we'll take it easy on ourselves to warm up. For those of you that want the meaty stuff, the last one I think really is where we've got something different to say, but I do want to touch on a few of these that are commonplace out there and give our take on them. So the first one, Tom, is AI is going to replace human agents in the insert time frame, right? A lot of people are saying in 2026, within 12 months, within 3 months. The time frame is kind of the irrelevant bit, but how are you feeling right now in terms of AI replacing human agents?
Yeah, I mean, you can't look at a publication online and not hearing people say that day to day, week to week. I mean, it's been a bit frustrating, I think, candidly, for folks in our industry like you and I. I mean, so for me, that's an absolute myth. It's a dangerous one. What we're actually seeing in our day to day is, it's also echoed across, I think, multiple trend reports for customer experience in 26 is that fully automated experiences increase customer frustration. From our perspective, AI augments humans. It doesn't necessarily replace empathy, judgment, or accountability. As hard as I know that vendors are trying to get there, and maybe someday they do, but I can tell you right now, personally, it does increase my frustration when I call in and have to deal with AI and it can't understand what I've said clear as day 4 times. And, I would tell you, I'm finding more frustration than satisfaction personally.
Yeah. So my view is a little more nuanced on this. Could it replace what an agent's doing today? Absolutely, in certain cases and certain applications. But the overall AI replaces human agents has this connotation of a significant decrease in the overall number of human agents involved. That's where I strongly disagree with it, and I think it's a myth. And it goes back to that principle that I think we've talked about before on the Bald and the Beard is there's a big chasm between the experience that the average caller or not necessarily just voice, right? The average customer has with a brand versus what they would ideally like if they got everything they wanted in the world. So AI is taking some of the basic stuff, doing it in some cases adequately, Some cases well, some cases not well. So there's finesse there, but it just moves the human into a different role. There's so much, and all of these predictions that say AI is going to do this type of role and it's going to reduce headcount by this are all accurate. Not all of them, but some of them are accurate in terms of what they're stating, but inaccurate in terms of the realities of the world, which is customer expectations are not static. The example that I usually give here is go back 10, 15 years ago. There was no expectation that if you ordered something, mail order as it was back then, that it would show up in your door 2 days at the most, probably 3 hours, right? That wasn't the world. And we've adapted to that. And now if I order something and it takes more than a week, I think the war's ended, right? So we've got this incredible ability to change our expectations based on what is offered by one organization, and then everybody else has to keep up. We're going to see that happen now in the CX space. So I think it's yes, in the way it's stated, it's highly dangerous and misleading, but that's not to say there are not some applications where AI could do arguably a better job. There are plenty of other jobs for those humans to go do. And my goodness, I'm excited for our ability as an industry to put people in those roles that are more fulfilling, that lead to a better overall CX. Bring that on.
Absolutely.
All right. We could probably go on about that one, but I think maybe let's move on to number 2. We've got a few on the list here today. AI is already embedded in CX workflows. I'll let you take the first response to that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a stone cold reality. I mean, there's no, him hawing about reality or myth on that one. This is a reality. I mean, AI has moved past the point of experimentation. It's amazing though. A lot of brands still are nervous to dip their toe in the water, but most have tried in a little bit, some way, shape, or form to implement it in the day-to-day. But here in 2026, it's obviously helping agents resolve issues faster, guiding decisions in real time for contact center agents and customer experience, and ideally reducing operational friction. It's not to the point where it's stealing jobs yet, but it's elevating performance. And you've heard us talk about for the past 2 years this marriage between labor and tech. And I think we're starting to get there. Right? We're starting to get there with the
Finally.
Yeah, it's great, right? We've been talking about this forever, but it's we're starting to really see that marriage come to where the agents are viewing it as a friend and not a foe. And I think that's if it can help their KPIs and make them look better, they're all about the technology. And I think at the end of the day, to your point, we're past the point, I think, of saying, this is going to replace jobs. It's going to put agents in more difficult, more complex jobs where their skill sets can really come out to the customer. And let's let the AI handle the lower hanging fruit.
Yeah, and difficult and complex can equal interesting, right? So that's not a bad thing for the agents. I'm retain my level of optimism that this makes, especially in the US where we have some challenges keeping people interested in these roles. I think as AI starts to take the repetitive stuff and you actually start to be empowered to have a real connection with the customers you're interacting with, I think that brings some of the fun back into these jobs. It's probably not going to be the most fun ever, but if it can be a little bit better than it was, that starts to help on many levels. People that enjoy the work they're doing, that feel that work's rewarding, typically show up in a better frame of mind and do a better job, which is good for everybody. I think there's another example in here too. When you look at embedded in daily CX workflows, I think we can stretch that into QA, right? And QA is one of those classic examples of mature AI technology. And I remember distinctly when this was first brought to market, there was a lot of people like, oh, so I don't need human QA at all. And that, of course, wasn't how it ended. What we're saying now is it's that needle in the haystack. You're looking for the very best calls, you're looking for the very worst calls, and you're looking to put things in place to take the best and use them for training, and take the worst and figure out why that happened and how it doesn't happen again. Instead of a 5% sampling, you do 100% sampling. So you know you've got the very best and the very worst. And then you take those same human resources you had before and you put them in places where they're more effective. I'm talking about QA and supervisor time. I've not seen 100% AI QA be touted, and the case studies don't say, oh my goodness, we saved so much money on our QA overhead. What I'm seeing is the right thing, which is we're getting these significant upticks in CSAT, in NPS, and it's down to the fact that now we can focus the resources that we had on the things that are meaningful, and we start to change outcomes. So again, it's not a big cost reduction driver. It's a put the resource where the resource is most effective and have the AI help in that direction.
Yeah, I think to just piggyback on your last point there, I think when I think back to my own operations days, those people were in quality management roles and training management roles because they earned it, right? They were great employees, very good at what they want to do, that maybe fell into more of a mundane job. And to your point, we can now utilize their time much better by giving them more meaningful data at scale and allowing them to be the world-class coaches that they can be. So I think if anything, when we first heard about this a few years back, it was, wow, you can eliminate these jobs and get 100% QA and improve your margin and improve quality. Well, you can certainly improve quality, but I think the utilization of those resources the story's played out a little differently now, where organizations are being able to use those resources a little more wisely versus just a direct cut to the bottom of the P&L.
Seems like we have a theme going here. Let's see if we can break the theme with the next one. So AI enables personalization at scale. So we've long chased the personalization benefit. Now we have the tools to do it. Myth or reality?
Oh man, I kind of feel like it's a partial myth.
Okay.
I personally, in my personal life, we're in technology. It's what we do for a living in our world, but I think there's an element of excitement, but still very much an element of being a little scared, right? I think that, regardless of the publications you're reading, being hyper personalized in interaction without consent, to me, feels a little invasive. I think there needs to be a relevant personalization. Thanks, Mr. Luther. You've been a X, Y, and Z brand, cardhold member for X years. Thank you for your recent. To me, that beats excessive personalization and using things on the internet that maybe I don't give access to that might be publicly available. That's scary to me. That feels like you're I'm under surveillance versus repeating things to me that make me feel appreciated or useful. So for me, I'm kind of in between, but I think AI can go a little bit overboard on sharing with me what it already knows about me. It feels a little creepy.
So this falls into the category of just because you can doesn't mean you should. So if I'm calling for my takeout order that I call in for every Friday, and it's the same order because my life's just that exciting, then it's fine that place I'm calling says, hey, your usual Friday order, sir? Great, fantastic. That's like if it was a local place and it was the same person and they knew me and they knew my order, that's comfortable and familiar. But hey, I looked at your latest LinkedIn post and saw this, and now I'm thinking that maybe based on the fact that you said 2026 was a year of a health kick, that you want a salad, Andrew. Do you want a salad instead of that pizza? That is what you're talking about. That sure, logically it would make sense, but maybe an overstep. So some caution around some of these tools have the ability to do things that are not great, not widely adopted, and actually are counter to what you're trying to achieve, which is a feeling of being valued by the brand. All right.
Yeah, I love the order again button, right? Especially on mobile food apps. I love that. I love that they, creature of habit, if you will, but I don't want them to say, by the way, don't forget to buy your wife flowers. Your anniversary's next week. That's those types of things are, a little bit of an extreme.
All right. So I promised a meaty one at the end of this. This has been super interesting for us. I'm going to spend a little time here as we wrap up our views of myth and reality for 2026. So outsourcing is dramatically increasing in pace in 2026. So let's start with, is that true? And if it's true, what are our speculations around why that's happening? And then we'll delve in. So I'll start us out. Yes, we're seeing an uptick. Absolutely. So you wanna share why you think that is, Tom?
Yeah, I think there's several reasons, but in the vein of technology, let's focus there. I mean, I think it's a clear reality. For years and years, you've heard me say outsourcing was about hiring more reliable players and saving some dollars along the way. It's absolutely not about cost anymore. The brands that we're working with and we're seeing in the market are outsourcing more aggressively. Yes, to continue to get more reliable labor, but because the risk around technology has shifted. There's a lot of IT professionals out there that have been hem-hawing for a couple of years now saying, do we do this? Do we not? Do we do this? Do we not? Wait a second. We already know we have a labor issue. Why don't we leverage the world-class outsourcers that we know and spending millions of our own dollars on unproven tech stacks and partner with an outsourcer who already brings those mature tools, the trained talent, and a real-world operating experience to the table, right? All the risk is kind of on them. So it's a risk-reward situation for both sides. But that's a message that really is, I think, hitting with CIOs, CFOs, COOs around how do we de-risk while still enhancing our customer experience.
So let me put that in the context that I see it. You've got that operational mindset. I've got the sit off in the corner and think about strategy mindset, as everybody that regularly consumes our content is well aware. I think what happened was, if you go back prior to the AI buzz, so 5 years ago, people were coming to organizations like ours and saying, hey, we'd love it if you could find us a better outcome for less money. That was ultimately, if you boil down what everybody asked for, that was ultimately the underlying. I want a better outcome, more compliant, more consistent, more reliable, less stress, less this, more that, whatever, right? Better outcome, and I'd love to pay a little bit less for it. So it was, how do you do that? And our solution was mid-market BPOs. And then AI came along and said, oh yeah, I can do that. Way cheaper, way faster. Yeah. And it was sort of the braggy little kid that showed up and just made a bunch of promises. Now, some of it's real. Much of it's maybe not as real because reality to the world, things are not as simple as it sounded. What a lot of those brands have now figured out is AI can deliver some outcomes, but it's hard. There's risk, there's complication, there's time, there's effort. It's interesting that all of those barriers start to sound really similar to the barriers of getting a human to produce those outcomes in the same way. So what we're seeing is the same reasons a brand would have turned to a BPO to offset the human-based CX is the same reason they're turning to a BPO to offset the AI-based CX headaches. I love the principles. I love the outcomes. I want all of that. I don't want to do the work because that's not what we do as a company. We do X, Y, and Z, something different. Take that, do it well. And as you know, we've been working with our portfolio of BPOs now for it's almost 3 years, right? Two and a bit years, saying this is the next iteration of services, a combination of technology delivered outcome based solutions and human delivered. Those two will exist in the BPO world. They'll both be important. And fortunately, we were listened to. Maybe there were some other sources involved in that transformation too. But now we have this portfolio of BPOs that are really good at doing the labor and tech balance on behalf of clients. The most fun that I've had is when we've introduced that type of a BPO to a client, and the BPO says, look, you're doing great at this part and this part. Carry on with that. We don't need to be involved in that. But these other 6 things, the next 6 things that you haven't got to yet, we've already done those. Would you like us to take some of them? And there's this back and forth collaboration it's not combative. It's not, hey, you have to do it our way. It's just this is one way to get there if you want to accelerate that. And unlike, because I remember I go back to when cloud was introduced to IT teams, the feeling of threat. Early AI had some elements of that in the CX world. Sure. So these things come and eat our lunch. What I'm seeing now is we're kind of past that period where everybody's settled down. Most people have settled down enough that we're actually having these really cool conversations around, yeah, I want to keep that in-house. Or you can do that and you've already done it and you've got a couple of case studies with other brands that have worked out the wrinkles and I can just buy that from you. Yeah, I'll do that. So it's a really exciting time.
It is an exciting time. I would tell you that, it's beautiful to see the strategic partnerships that are happening between brands and BPOs more than ever. It's been in the BPO game a long time, and it was, I'm the client, you're the BPO, listen to what I say, I'm never going to ask you for your opinion. Man, those days are gone. And they're leveraging BPOs for the vast amount of industries they support. They actually do have a lot of great experience and some great ideas you probably haven't thought about, Mr. Customer. And now more than ever, they're leaning in for their advice, which is, again, a byproduct, but it's been really cool to see that evolution.
Yeah, and you've got a entity that is helping that balance, because I don't want anybody to leave this session thinking that we've reached a point of inertia or a static situation. That balance that we talk about of labor and technology is absolutely in flux. I think we've reached a sort of approach and attitude point of maturation where we're starting to get out of our own way as an industry and do things that progress us forward. But today's balance of labor and tech is not tomorrow's. It's not next week's. It's moving at a pace and changing, and the adoption of your customers is starting to shift, and their expectations, back to that point I made earlier, their expectations will shift at an equally, if not greater, dramatic pace. So you've got to be looking at, and I've been encouraged, some of the conversations we've had have shifted from how do we get better CX for less into how do we get better CX and offset some of the increase.
Right.
We weren't having those conversations 2 years ago.
No.
So it's almost like we've hit a bottom, and now we're starting to realize that revenue growth and client acquisition and retention truly are based on the experience. And what I find even more encouraging is brands are coming and saying, this is who we are. This is how we want to treat our customers. It's not all the same. It's not this is the gold standard of CX. It's like, this is what works for the people that have chosen to do business with us, and this is how we want to provide it. And if it ends up costing a little more, so be it, because we see the upside. My favorite description I heard recently was, this is the most cost-effective way to differentiate our brand. It's like, ooh, the market's starting to realize. Like, I think we've had that mindset, and we've been trying to say, look, this is the low-hanging fruit for differentiation. But now brands are coming to us with that already in their minds and saying, help us execute on it. Exciting times.
It is.
So, yeah, this is now getting to where you need to be. Outsourcing is not the shortcut. It's not the easy button. It's more just a balanced and effective way of leveraging resources, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've said this for a long time, and it's great to your point to see the market come with us. I think the strongest partners aren't just staffing providers; they're really overall operational platforms. They're bringing proven labor models, embedded tech, and true governance around that. The brands simply don't want to rebuild themselves, and to me, that's why the outsourcing demand is absolutely on fire. It's faster, it's safer, and it's more predictable.
Yeah. Um, just as a sort of closing note here, there are a few that are coming and saying they're willing to spend more to differentiate. I do think it's fair to be realistic that that's a minority. Most of what we deal with on a daily basis is I have a budget, I want better outcomes, and this is the budget I have. So in 90 some percent of cases, it's not that these changes are a cost increase. There are a few, and I highlight those as sort of the indication of market awareness that a little spend on CX is actually a really smart investment. But for the most part, almost everybody we deal with comes and says, we're spending X number of million per year now. How do we do that better? And all of the stuff that we've talked about is it doesn't matter if it's AI, it doesn't matter if it's human. Ultimately, what matters is for that spend, how do we get you in a better place? And how do we create that differentiated experience that ultimately does the thing that CX has never been strongly associated with, which is grow an organization. So it's no longer the how cheap can we make it so that we don't lose revenue. It's now we're in the, oh, we can use that to drive revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is a major turning point that when we look back a year from now or 11 months from now at the start of 27, my guess, and I'll sneak a little prediction in here. My guess is that 2026 is the year that business leaders realize CX was their growth lever. So great that we're seeing a very seasonal set of green shoots starting to happen on that. Excited for what's to come in 26. Any closing thoughts from you, Tom?
No, I would just say, for me, especially for brands that are under pressure to modernize CX without blowing budgets or timelines, outsourcing is a real game changer. For me, it's not just one silver bullet. The real game changers are the combinations, and that's what we're trying to drive people to think about. It's AI plus humans, and automation and plus trust, and efficiency plus empathy. The CX leaders win in 2026 by knowing what to adapt, what to ignore, and where and how to implement responsibly. It's not a one size fits all model,
No.
but it's really neat to see people are willing to trust and try more than ever. And outsourcing is a great way to de-risk that.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing to take away is that there's not one thing to take away. There's not one
Right.
singular thing you can do. And that's true, right? If you look back at anything in business, it's never just oh, I did this and the world changed for me. It's always a series of intentional, thoughtful improvements that on their own might not change the world, but when you layer them on top of each other, the compounding effect is profound. And I think the advice we're giving here, if we're distilling it down into that, is you're not alone in layering those things on top of each other. There are resources like our organization and the BPOs that we work with and the partners that we have that can help accelerate that layering. Because this is not a quick, easy fix. There's work involved here, but you don't have to do that work alone. There are ways to accelerate that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've committed ourselves to coming back more frequently, so we'll update on this. Anybody that has thoughts that want to share with Tom or I about what would be helpful, what maybe we didn't answer from a myth or reality perspective, happy to take comments and input for future Bald and Beards. But until then, I need a haircut and Tom doesn't. So I'll leave it there.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.